Good evening, everybody. Happy Friday. Um, I am Evangelist Felicia Brogy here with Positive Tea with Fee. And I want to thank you guys for being here tonight and giving me the opportunity to reach you with a dose of positive tea. I'm really appreciative of you guys, and it's really awesome to be able to meet here. And I hope everyone had a wonderful, wonderful week. So, this week we are entering the show with the title of The Worth of Life's Expectations. Expectations are definitely something that none of us are a stranger to. Expectations are something that fill our lives in one way or another, and we just want to put some things in perspective. Um, there's expectations coming from every direction for all of us, and it's something that starts off when we're young and it just follows us in one way or another. Expectations are pretty much something that we have a lot and don't even realize we have it. So we're really going to get into that a little bit deeper and some categories that I feel like are important and just some things that I know from my own life's experiences and my dealings with expectations have really been something that I feel like we should dig into. So, the first thing we're going to talk about is expectations from our parents. Kind of touched on that just a little bit, talking about how when we enter into the world, from the moment we take our first breath, there's expectations. And as parents, especially those of us who are newer parents, I personally, as a mother, I have a preteen, he's 12 and a half. And a lot of things become very evident when you do become a parent yourself. But even before then, at a young age, grasping that there's something expected of us, there's something that our parents need us to do, are used to us doing, want us to do, are looking forward to us doing. And it's kind of like every single person is part of that cycle of expectations. The circle of life. I know most of our viewers are not really past the era of The Lion King, and I'm talking about the original Lion King. Remember Mufasa telling Simba about the circle of life? He took him on a little journey through the jungle and they were just kind of talking about what was going to be expected of Simba. Now, I'm not sure about all of you, but I am an early 80s baby. So I was fairly young. Not young, young, but I was fairly young when the first Lion King came out. And I remember even then kind of getting a different grasp on expectations from our parents. And obviously, any of the Disney movies, they most of the time they have a story or an underlying hypothetical message that they're trying to get out and reach people. But even the animated uh, cartoons and movies, just kind of gives you, from your perspective, even as a child, that there's expectations. There are things you're expected to do even before you're born, after you're born, and those aren't things that you can just shake off. They're things that carry you. And so with that being said, at a very young age, I started to kind of understand what expectations were and kind of match a lot of things that I felt at that age were specific expectations that came from my parents. A lot of you know that I am an evangelist. I believe in God. I am a believer. I also have respect for atheist and agnostic beliefs. I have individuals who are connected to me who are Muslim, I don't judge anyone. I just know that I am a Christian and me a specific assignment. My parents raised us in a particular organization that I am no longer a part of, and I haven't been a part of that since I was 19. So that's about 21 years ago. As a child, we had certain standards that we went by. We had certain things we wore. We had certain things that we watched on TV, certain things we didn't watch on TV, et cetera, et cetera. And so within just the regular moral expectations that our parents have of us doing right and wrong, keeping ourselves clean, watching, what you say to make sure you're maintaining respect for adults, making good grades, being obedient, sharing. Those were an extra layer from the organization for expectations. And so going from preteen age, I'd say, into teenage age and even young adulthood, those expectations went from something that was normal, routine, standard in the household to things that became challenging. And they really, really, really became challenging, as I've told you guys before, around the time that I was an adolescent. That was a very hard period of time for me in general, physically, emotionally, mentally. It was just very challenging. And I remember during that time, there was a major battle within myself to be able to separate expectations that I was going to try to carry with me as I reached young adulthood and those that I was going to choose to leave behind. And keep in mind, as a young adult, you're barely an adult. You're still, a child in a lot of ways. And it was very hard for me to be able to separate what was okay for my parents to expect and for me to hold on to and mold my life versus what was okay for me to leave on the table and still respect them as my parents, in particularly my father. Both of my parents are wonderful people. I'm friends with my mother. She has taught me so much about being a woman, being a mother, being a wife, and I love her so much. A lot of you know, however, I am a daddy's girl. And with that came along with his expectations of me being a lot more of what I felt was a personal responsibility as his daughter. And that's something that carried me for even decades after I really started grasping that at a young age. And it just grew and grew until I got to the point where I was able to accept the fact that parents want what's best for us ultimately. In normal circumstances, parents want what's best for their children. In normal circumstances, things that we have in our lives when we come into this world are basic, healthy, moral expectations from the people who bring us into this world. So I want to start by saying that, and I don't just speak of someone who had wonderful parents, but I speak as a parent myself. So I want to start out saying that. And so from that nurturing that we depend on for our survival, we develop these independent tendencies, these independent things that we do. Physically is basically where it starts. You're able to start feeding yourself, clothing yourself, making specific requests, and then that kind of molds you into your personality emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And you kind of become who you are. And there are all these things that we take mainly from our parents at the beginning of our lives. And going back to that circle of life from The Lion King, our parents had the same expectations to some degree with our grandparents, their parents, which molded them to be who they were at the beginning of their lives. And then they went from nurturing to developing to molding their own personalities, their own independence. So they might have different experiences than we have. It was a different time. There might be different personality traits that they have versus some that are totally different from our grandparents. But the circle of life, the circle of expectations that are passed on from our parents to us, we need to recognize which ones are going to manifest in positive strengths and realistic weaknesses and things that we want to use within ourselves to develop ourselves and be able to be successful in fulfilling our purpose in life. And that's not always easy. We love our parents. We need our parents, first physically, then mentally and emotionally. But we still have to be able to find a healthy balance. And that's something that took me almost 40 years to be able to do because although I was able to walk away or divide or separate some of my life's choices from my parents' choices and still respect them and consider myself an upstanding member of society, it still was not a balance that was allowing me to not be confused, not be sitting on the fence, still under the hood of expectations that my parents had set. See, a lot of times we start making steps toward that balance. We start making steps to hold on to the independence that we've developed for ourselves, the walk in life that we choose to walk for us. But psychologically and mentally, a lot of the times we still have the expectations of our parents embedded in us so deep. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you just have to recognize what's something that you need to hold on to for positive growth versus what's okay for your parents to expect, but it's not going to work for you. And that is something that took me such a long time because part of me was comfortable just knowing that I wasn't meeting their expectations or mine either. Part of me was comfortable with that. And I knew that when I was ready to do the work, the self development, as we've talked about many times before on the show, that self development, that work that it had to be able to face up to my parents and make a firm stand, not constantly getting off the subject. Being able to communicate is so important to gain your your independence, your independent thinking, your balance in understanding that what you choose to do with your life is okay because it's your life. And even when it comes to your parents, understanding that not only will your parents still love you, although they may disagree with you, although they may get annoyed, embarrassed, disappointed, all those emotions are okay. It's okay for my dad to be disappointed in me. It's okay for my dad to question me. It's okay for my mom to still hold out hope that sometimes I'm going to come around to her way of thinking. But you know what? I still love my parents. And I have been at a point in life for a little bit now where I've been able to face those things. And I've been able to accept the fact that it is okay for my parents to expect things of me. It is also okay for me to respectfully let them know my life is my life, and this is how I choose to live it. We can equally exist as parents and as daughter, love each other, respect each other, and it's allowed them to express a certain amount of love for me that has proved to be unconditional. But guess what? It was there all along. I just didn't tap into it. And the reason I didn't tap into it is because I hadn't reached a point of my own self development and independence to understand that I could do my own thing, no matter what their expectations were. And the same thing is going to go for my son. I'm going to have expectations for him. It's okay. Parents have those. It's part of what they do. And it's going to be okay for him to still be a productive member of society, fulfill his purpose, whatever that may be, and for me to still love him and us sometimes agree to disagree. And that's something that I really feel like everyone listening should be able to grasp, understand, and appreciate because it's been extremely valuable in my life in so many ways. The second thing that we want to talk about tonight is society's expectations. We live in a world, and it's always been this way. It's not just our generation, it's not just our time, but we live in a world existing to where people want to make others comfortable. People want to fit in, you know? And it's so important to know as individuals who are trying to be the best we can be, trying to do what we need to do to fulfill our purpose, you do not let society tell you who you should be. If what you're doing is not infringing or imposing on the rights of another human being, you're not breaking the law, you're not hurting anyone, society can't tell you who you should be. And a lot of people are really wrapped up in the popularity contest of kind of doing what everybody else is doing. And we're all different for a reason. We all have our own ways of doing things. We all have our own experiences in life that have molded us to be the people that we are. And society does not have the right to determine who you should be, why this is a way to go and that's not, and we do this over here and we should. No, that's no. You have to trust enough in yourself to understand individualism. One thing about society is society has a way of putting you in a box for their comfort. Society's expectations can affect your mental health, it can affect healthy relationships, and it can affect any growth that you may have simply because you do not want to stand out. It's okay to stand out. It's okay to do something different, and it's okay to live separate from the way everyone else thinks you should live, thinks you should feel, thinks you should be, telling you how you should care about people, telling you how you should dress, telling you how you shouldn't care about people, telling you how you shouldn't dress. Learn from your own experiences. Everyone in society is coming from a different place. Everyone in society has come from a different background, and you don't want to be a robot. I decided a long time ago that caring for myself is something that's valuable. I just had to do the self development to understand that certain things were okay. And when there were things in society that just didn't sit well with me, I knew that I had to be the type of person that stood for something so I wouldn't fall for anything. That's not the easiest thing to do. The world we live in wants everyone to blend in. Standing out throughout history has caused people to lose their lives, lose their sanity, lose their trust, lose their self worth. And I just decided a long time ago that's not who I wanted to be. Now, mind you, it took me a while to really get to the point where I wanted to do the work to live out my purpose. But one thing about me, when it comes to society, when it comes to culture, when it comes to everybody else, I've never been the type of person that wanted to blend in, be part of the crowd. Everybody's doing it, so I should do it too. I've just never had that attitude. And it's been something that has been a major strength of mine. Um, Society's expectations just serve as something that can really distract you from being who you're truly meant to be. And society has caused lots of people to miss out on what's most important. And what's most important is us as individuals doing what we're supposed to do individually to then come together as a group to do the things that we're supposed to be doing here. Your purpose is not my purpose. My purpose is not your purpose. So the expectations of society are a weight that you don't need to allow to stomp out your individuality. It will do that. Society will mark its territory in your mentality and cause you to be stagnant, cause you to forget your individuality. And before you know it, you're going to be more of everything around you than you are yourself. The last thing that I want to talk about tonight is your personal expectations. Your parents set out expectations for you, society sets out expectations for you. What are your expectations for you? For everybody, that's going to be something different. Our experiences are different. Sometimes it takes a while to understand and truly put in a healthy perspective what your personal expectations are. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. Throughout my life, I've been told that one of my weaknesses was being overly sensitive. That's not necessarily just talking about being a crybaby. That's just talking about the perspective that a lot of people have had of my personality and my disposition. I've also been told before that I was too dramatic. I've been told a lot of things, and they haven't all been negative, but I will say with those two things, being dramatic and being sensitive, when I was younger, I would try to isolate myself, as I've told you guys before. I would try to downsize my personality when I was younger. After self development and understanding life's experiences, mixed with my own perspective, my own way of looking, my own way of thinking, I was able to come to the realization that being dramatic and being sensitive, when it's pointed in the right direction and pointed toward doing things that are helping me fulfill my purpose, that means that I look at things deeper than most people ever will. That includes good stuff or bad stuff. It means I love very hard. And I won't apologize for that because I've experienced a lot in my life. Yeah, that includes some heartbreak, but it's also an overwhelming joy of the successes in my individuality that I have been able to express. I'm also a very kind and caring person. I'm very empathetic to people who need something more within themselves that they're not quite able to pinpoint. They're not quite able to understand. I also realize that there's a lot of wrongs in the world that need to be righted. And in my little corner of the world, I have a ministry that God put inside me, Positive Outcomes Ministry. And that's what makes this partnership with Podcast 49 Network and Positive Tea with Fee possible. So I know that the emotions, those dramatic emotions, well, they can well up and they can get stuck, but not anymore because I'm productively using my voice, using my experiences, and using my testimony to empower and inspire positivity because I know what it feels like to have to hold it in, to have to not understand why you have the gifts that you don't know what to do with. The personal expectations for myself that come from all of that emotion, all that passion, all my loudness allows me to learn from my experiences. And I'm able to share those with people. And I'm far from perfect. Far, far from perfect. But I'm really happy because I noticed that making another person find their way by all the inspiration I'm putting out there and allowing them to analyze how being negative is unproductive, even in a negative situation. I feel fulfilled. I feel fulfilled because I know these gifts and this big personality and all of the things that have allowed me to be able to reach people and inspire people was there for a reason. The perspective and awareness of my surroundings from all of that emotion, passion, and sensitivity and dynamic personality that just comes out oozing everywhere allows me to appreciate my environment. I do love people very much. But you know something else? I love myself. And I didn't always love myself the way that I should have loved myself. A lot of times, our personal expectations are not healthy for us. They're not realistic, and they're not coming from a place that's embracing positivity. And I had to change that. I had to change it when it came to my dealings with people, when it came to my dealings with employment, when it came to my dealings with myself in general. And I'm still doing what I can to be the best at that self development and self care that I should have been all along, but I wasn't. And I have no regrets in that, although it was a very hard time for me because that's what allows me to give my testimony now. This is what allows me to empower. This is what allows me to be positive, and it's what allowed me to tell myself, you know what? Expect the best from yourself. There's people that I admire from my father, my mother, several people that I've met that I just thought were so awesome. I'm a very humble person, and it's okay to be humble. But I know that it's also okay to be confident. It's okay to keep learning, and I'm always striving to be better. I'm never going to reach a point where I feel like there's no more growth, and neither should you. There's always room for improvement, there's always room for growth. And so, my personal expectations let me know that when someone tells me you're very positive, I love your smile, you're inspirational, you're passionate, you've helped me go to the next level. It's humbling, it's confidence, but it also reminds me that my personal expectations are for my strengths just like they are for my weaknesses. And it's okay to take things about yourself that you don't understand and put those into positive perspective. So, with my parents' expectations, there's a balance. With society's expectations, if it's good, I'll keep it. Most of the time, it's not. So, I throw it out just to be different intentionally because God wanted me to stand out like a sore thumb, and that's okay. So, my personal expectations are this: positivity, self development, and inspiring others with every single thing God put in me to do so. I want to thank you guys for tuning in tonight to Positive Tea with Fee. I'll see you next week.